Huh. Everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another Sprue review. This will be our last one of 2024, and today we are going to be taking a look at Brutal and Cunning. Yes, Games Workshop have been very kind and have sent me Brutal and Cunning, and well, I've been looking forward to this one because it looked quite interesting, and not just from a kill team point of view. This might be getting into the weeds a little bit with the review a little bit too early right at the beginning, but when they made this change from doing big boxes all of the time to these single boxes to kind of act as bolt-ons to your kill team main box, it didn't quite work that way. I mean, it did, because it was giving you these extra kill teams and a little bit of terrain to add to your burgeoning collection. But this one actually interacts with Hivestorm. As far as I can tell, the terrain in here is almost functionally useless unless you have the Hivestorm stuff. I mean, it's not. It's always usable. But it is literally an upgrade pack. It is a scenery upgrade pack. It says it right there. Killzone upgrade. Compound Siege. So that's interesting. We do, of course, also have the Ratlings, which are gorgeous, and this is my now third iteration of Ratlings that I own, which is pretty cool. And we also have the Wrecka Mob, which kind of look like tank busters, just without all of the sticky mines and stuff like that. So there's some really cool stuff going on in this box, and I'm excited to have a look at those sprues with all of you. Of course, I'm filming this in the future. I've already looked at them. You're yet to. So we should get on with doing that. But just quickly, before we do get to that, please make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are getting very, very close to our target of 75,000 subscribers on the year, and only you can help me get there, because you're all legends. And if you're as excited for this as I am, then please do leave a comment below telling me just how excited you are. So, without further ado, let's jump in to Brutal and Cunning. Here it is then, Brutal and Cunning, the next kill team box, and this is a supplemental box, basically, when it comes to the terrain, for Hivestorm. So the terrain that is in here goes together with your new Hivestorm boxes as well, theoretically, one should say. And there it is, Killzone upgrade, Compound Siege, expansion to Killzone Vulcus, which is the stuff that is also on pre-order as of today. You can buy the box separately, but this stuff is the expansion for your boxes of Hivestorm. And what is also included in here, we've had to keep the box sideways, but we can just twizzle it around a little bit there, just for the main event here, as it were. Scan here to check out the free team rules, apparently. Kill Team Brutal and Cunning dossier, the assembly guide, combined kill teams token sheet, orc transfer sheet, kill team card packs for the Wrecka Krew data cards, the Ratling data cards, includes 19 Citadel miniatures, the full Wrecka Krew kill team, 8 operatives, full Ratling kill team of 11 operatives, and the Killzone upgrade Compound Siege, 6 breachable stockade walls, 2 bunkers, and 6 fire steps, all contained within one, I would say small box, but this is quite the hefty box. As you can see, Brutal and Cunning, tactical skirmish combat. It's as wide as my hand. So, I've already cut the tape at one end, so less fumbling live on the record. But they're still fumbling, because we're not 100% professional around here, as you know by now, having watched many of these, I'm sure. So just slide out the big tray. Here it is. And there it is. And to nobody's surprise, it is a box full of sprues. So the first one that we see is this one for the orcs, for the Wrecka Krew. That's pretty cool. Okay, it's difficult to make any assumptions at the moment. Bag of bases. Just one bag of bases by the looks of things at the moment. And then we have another sprue there for the Wrecka Krew. There it is. So just the, well, I mean, it's technically 3 half-side sprues. There you go. So that's what you can expect to see whenever this box comes out individually. Next up we have the Ratling's sprue. There it is, and they come on just your singular sprue. That's it, just one sprue for the Ratlings. We then have our 1 and 2 identical sprues of terrain. 1 and 2, like that. And these are the upgrade kit basically for your Vulcus terrain. There it is, it should be identical now. Lovely stuff. Right, pop that to one side for now. We'll get to that later. We have a piece of paper, piece of tissue paper. It's gone. And then we have another folio. Yes. Oh, and there's our transfer sheet left out in the sun. There it is. Orc clans. Good stuff. This is the 2021 one. So this is not a new transfer sheet. This is a 3-year-old transfer sheet. So let's remove that. Now, here we go. We have our little folio. Here it is. And contained within here will be the rest of the gubbins that comes in the box. So we have our dossier. There it is. And lots of cool stuff. That looked to me like an example of how the terrain goes together. Lovely. Love to see it. And there's all the rules and stuff, and the build instructions are separate. And the reason, I mean, I've checked it, I see it now, there it is, that's probably the build instructions right there. But recently, the Kill Team Justian kit, or well, rather Kill Team starter set, both of those, that box, it had the instructions for, well, all of the models, so the MDF terrain, the Death Guard, and the Space Marines. They were in the kind of rules pack, as it were. And the same thing was for the War of the Rohirrim. The rules coming in the scenario pack, not a separate box, but a separate book. But here we have a separate book. Hooray! Not included in this box is the Stronghold, because that's the thing that you get from your Hivestorm box. So this one is these bits. Don't glue them in if you don't want to. Well, I mean, you probably shouldn't, because these will make these very unwieldy, one would suggest. This will be how they kind of touch in together, which is pretty cool. I like this as a way of kind of making it more of a value add proposition. It's not just like a set of containers or something. It is a proper thing that clips into the big box that you presumably, as a fan of Kill Team, have possibly already got in your possession. And this is just the instructions for everything, what the size bases that we have. We have many different sizes of bases here: 140mm, 532s, 128, and 16 25mm bases. So we're gonna have to be on the lookout for that to make sure we get the right sizes. That should mean that it will tell you exactly what to do. Yeah, 40mm base for the Wrecka boss knob, for example. Does he have options? Looks like he has options. It's a Kill Team box, so I would expect there to be many, many, many optional extras in here. And it's fun that we start here actually with the Oryx. Oryx? Yeah, Oryx. That's not me just saying orcs in a weird way. Although, I guess, anyway, it doesn't matter. Then we have the Ratling Kill Team, where again, I would expect lots and lots of different options here for the Ratlings, because we are in Kill Team land. But we will have a better look at this a little later on. Oh, look at the little booby traps down there. That's very cool. I like that. And there we have our Killzone upgrade compound siege ×2. So we build out a bunker. But then for the rest of it, you kind of either just slide in a door if you want to. So really simple for the terrain, actually. That's going to be a load of good fun. We have a token sheet. There it is. And these should be our cards. Nicely labelled on the front with a bearded skull. Hey, wait a minute. Are these Ratlings moving in on my branding? And we have the orcs as well. There we go. Everything that comes in Brutal and Cunning. Is that what it's called? Yes. Brutal and Cunning. Can't believe I already forgot that. Okay, here we have it then. We have the instruction manual in all of its glory, and as we've already kind of flipped through it very briefly, we are just going to jump in, basically. Now, there's a couple of things to point out here on the first page. We actually do, down here, have a little base key. And I like the little base keys because it means we can take our loose bases and we can just put it over the top of that. And if it covers the dotted or not dotted line, then it's the right base. And if it doesn't cover it, it's not the right base. So that's a really good little... I always really like these kind of little graphics, just to kind of help with making sure that you're getting the right one, because it'll tell you which base goes with which. But the difference between a 28mm base and a 25mm base is quite negligible, so it can be quite hard to tell sometimes. So make sure you have a go on that one, or just compare the bases together, and if one is slightly bigger than the others, then it's not the right one for the 25mm. Anyway, we also have our key of what the sprues are, A, B and C. These being the kill zone upgrade ones, it very clearly states that there. These ones are the orcs because there's 3 of them, and these ones are the ratlings because there's 2 of them. And then we have an example of the things that are right there, of the things that you can build within this box. So we also, just before we go any further, we have an explanation of certain symbols. The 3 little shields in a yellow circle means choice of parts. Blue with the cogs means variant assembly. Do not glue the components if there's a little cross out with glue. We have a green tick for stage complete, or ×2 to build this many. So if you have 2 of the same miniature, for example, you'll have that right there, which will tell you you're going to build this one twice because it's on 2 separate sprues or whatever, something like that. So there we go. Now, the box does kick off with the orcs, the Wrecka Krew kill team. Now, as you can see, we have a really nice kind of explanation of what all of the weapons are: the rocket launcher, pulsar rocket, explosives, heavy rocket launcher, the rocket pistol, rocket rack, 2 rocket pistols, the chopper, knuckle busters, smash hammer, tank hammer. So if you've got a particular kind of loadout that you're thinking of, because you're building this based on rules rather than rule of cool, then these are what they look like in order to make sure that you've got the correct kind of war gear for your miniatures. We then have an absolute ton of interchangeable parts. We have 6 heads. We have 6 of these kind of, I guess they're guards for the rockets. We have 6 different rockets that we can use. We have 6 different heads again down here, and we have, well, these are helmeted heads and these are bear heads. We have some iron gobs or jaws, and we have some shoulder pads here and stuff like that, as well as the kind of end of a hammer down there. Plenty of different bits to choose from in order to make your miniatures stand out how you want them to. And similarly, each miniature within the Wrecka mob can be built one of 2 or 3 different ways. The boss knob, for example, can be built with 2 rocket pistols, or the big hammer and 1 rocket pistol. Now, one thing I've already had a check for in this is we had a little bit of a sort of mishap, I guess, when it came to the Aquilon kill team. There was the gunfighter with 2 las pistols and the sergeant with a las pistol and a power sword. However, if you used the las pistol on the sergeant, you couldn't build the gunfighter because you were out of las pistols. That is not the case here, at least in the Wrecka kill team. Nothing's carrying a rocket pistol, so if you want to use 2 rocket pistols, you can. However, we're probably going to go for the big old hammer, of course. So that shouldn't be a problem. As to whether that's a problem for any of the other miniatures, we shall soon find out. The key to look for here is if you have components that are labelled with the same number, it may not be a mistake, so you do just have to watch out for it. Maybe skip forward in the instructions if you need to make sure that you can build the one that you want. You could work backwards through the team to make sure you're not using up the components. The choice is yours, of course. But as you can see, we have 3 different options here. We can have the Tank Buster Rocketeer, a Tank Buster Gunner, or a Breaker Boy Fighter. We have a Tank Buster Gunner, Breaker Boy Crusher, or Breaker Boy Fighter, as you can see. And these are denoted by the blue, green, and the pink track. These green bits being the same, and that's the idea that you follow the color-coded instructions in order to get to the miniature that you actually want to build out of the components. There you go, we see 3 and 3 variants there, and then over here again once more we have 3 more variants. There is a change in the hammerhead. You can either have the rocket or just a plain old hammerhead. You can either build, as mentioned, the demolisher or just a fighter or a tank buster gunner. We also have a tank buster gunner over here, and we have a breaker boy fighter with just 2 variants here, so we're moving on from the 3 options. And then we once again have a 2 option breaker boy here. We then have our 2 squigs as well. So loads of pages for the instructions, lots and lots of components to be used here. And as you can see throughout, it's dotted the choice of parts, for example, there, and various others. So you should have 2 squigs plus 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 for your Wrecka mob, or Wrecka Krew is what they're actually called. So 8 miniatures by the looks of things is by my count, but I could be wrong. Now, to build our Wrecka Krew, we will need the instructions and we will need some plastic. The plastic we will require is this set of 2 sprues, this single sprue, and some of these bases, particularly the 40mm bases, and I suspect the 225mm bases for our squigs, and I think 32mm bases for the orcs themselves. Yep, 32mm, 25mm. So we'll want 2 25mm, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Yep, 5 32mm bases, which makes sense because the instructions come with a thing that says 5 32mm. So 1 40, 5 32s, and 2 25mm bases from our pack here. We shall get them out a little bit later. So before we jump into the building process of these miniatures, we are of course going to have a good long look at these sprues. Now, we're going to start with the one single separate one just there, which makes sense to me, and we'll snap the other one in 2 to make sure we get a good look at each of the sprues. So here it is. Now, one thing we're going to kind of have to deal with here on the orcs is that we are going to have arms that have connection points on muscles. We just are. It's a thing. It's a fact of life for orcs. We just have to kind of get used to it. But there are some stuff that we can kind of check out in order to kind of make things a little bit easier, or indeed make our lives a little bit harder. And the first thing I've already noticed is this kind of hammer there, just there, has a big old mold line right across the top of the hammer, just in there like that, which we don't like to see. Don't like to see that at all. Make sure the camera's in focus. There we go. And yes, well, that's a bit of a shame, and that must mean then that the mold lines are going to be consistent throughout this sprue, at least. Maybe not throughout the whole kit, but this one. So things like this head here, component number 10, I can already see there is a mold line going around the cheek. We are connected on the underside of the chin, but we are also connected right on the top of the skull. That is metal, so that's not the end of the world, but if there's any bare heads that like that, that's going to be a bit of a problem, only just because it just means we have to be a lot more careful with our knife or our mold line remover when we're smoothing them down, because we don't want to flatten them off or take too much off, because we don't want to chunk out the rest of that head. Things like these legs and stuff like that, and that body and things like that, they are going to have connection points generally on like the legs, on like the knees and the thighs and stuff. This one actually escapes it, which is pretty cool. We're connected up here on the 2 bits of armor and on the underside of these tactical rocks upon which it stands, which is a pretty good way of doing it. I like it. That being said, there is the mold lines going along it, so it's not all sunshine and roses. But then we have things like this leg here where we're connected on the back of it, just there, and this one here where we're connected actually in the join between the 2 legs, which is okay because that'll be covered up by the leg that sticks in here. Component 15, which I assume is this one here, which will go in with 14 generally. We're connected on the underside of the rock, and here once again right in the joint on the orc's bum, just there. One thing we're also going to look out for is when it comes to things like the weapons, like this one, mold lines aside, is if we're going to have connection points on kind of congested areas with orcs. Less so cutting edges of blades, because it doesn't really matter too much with orcs. If you accidentally take a little bit too much off, it just kind of adds to the ramshackle nature, but it can be irritating. For example, if it is way too congested around here, which it's not quite because the circular saw blade is there, it's not too close, that is kind of easy to get into. That should be fine. This one over here, similarly, we have one right on the power source and right in the connection point between the wrist and the rest of the arm. That presumably is going to be covered up by a piece that goes over the top of it, so like a hammerhead or something like that, so that's okay. And then right up here again we have a connection point on the end of that sort of, well, I guess it's sort of an antenna or a sort of lever for the weapon. I'm not going to question it too much. But then we've already mentioned it, we have things like this arm here and this arm here, this arm here and this arm here and this one here, where we are connected on the smooth muscles of the orcs. Now again, we've mentioned it many times before, same over here and here as well actually, and there as well. All of these arms, we're not just connected in joints here, we are connected on the smooth muscles, and that means you just have to be really careful with your knife or mold line remover, because you don't want to, as mentioned, just flatten it straight off, because it will be really noticeable, especially in a contrast plus tutorial. You just want to move with the curvature of the piece, so just let it kind of talk to you, kind of run your blade or your mold line remover from a little bit further back from the area that needs to be smoothed, and just let it guide you across the piece like that sort of thing, rather than just going straight, because otherwise, like I said, you'll flatten and smooth it off, which you don't necessarily want to do, especially if it's a connection point that's kind of right on top of an arm like that one there, or towards the front of an arm, which I can't quite see here. So a lot of them are turned to be towards the back, but that's okay. Well, it's better than it being right on the front. Anyway, all in all, it's a okay sprue. The mold lines might be a bit of an issue, but we'll have to see what that's like. So we'll pick up our next sprue, which is this one, and we're just gonna snap it in two like that, just to make it a little bit easier for analysis. I'm going to start with this one because it was in my hand and no other reason. Now what we do have here is a bunch of the heads and one of my loose hairs. Yours will not be included. Well, maybe your loose hairs will be included with yours, but not mine, unfortunately. No clones of me are yet to be made. Anyway, we have our bear heads here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I guess 6, where we are unfortunately connected on the top of the head, right in the middle as well, which is a bit of a shame. Like I said, we've already talked about it. It's just when it comes to kind of putting them together, you do have to be really careful because it's such an obvious place to not get right. So again, just move with the curvature, be gentle, do it in a couple of different passes. Don't try and just kind of smooth it all off at once, because otherwise, like I said, you will flatten off the top of the head, which, you know, you might not despise to look at on your orcs miniatures, but it will be very noticeable because, like I said, it's right on top of the head in the kind of place where the eye is drawn when it comes to your painted models. Now the helmets are not much better, I'm afraid. We're still connected on the tops of the helmets here and here and here, and actually this one component, I'm thinking 97 just there, is actually connected right between two rivets. So again, just be really careful there. You might have to snip it closer to the sprue rather than the actual component to make sure you don't accidentally chop off those rivets as you go, because it's a really nice helmet, but if you accidentally remove either of these helmet rivets when you're using your knife or your mold line remover, it'll be noticeable, given that the rest of them all have these kind of lovely sculpted rivets. So that's one thing to bear in mind. As for things like the rest of these components on here, apart from this kind of section down here, just for the moment, we're looking in pretty good nick. They have these shields for the rocket launchers, and they're all kind of connected around the outside in fairly reasonable places, so it should be easy to get them off the sprue and smoothed down. Same for these shoulder pieces here, here and here, and the bits that go around the hammers and stuff here, 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 and here and here and here. They're all in pretty good nick. They're not connected to the sprue too many times, aside from maybe this one where we're connected 3 times in total, so that'll be one of the ones that takes the longest to clean down because of the 3 connection points to the sprue. We have another one of those hammers where, again, we're not connected in anywhere that's too congested, so it's pretty nice. We do have a connection point there again, just between two rivets, right close to that one. So you just want to watch out. It might be a little bit congested there for a larger sized clipper. So watch out for that. We have another arm here where we're connected on hard details here and there and here as well. But then we are connected once again in the muscular flesh as well. So you just have to watch out for that. Bodies and stuff, it's the same as it was on that other sprue. I'm not expecting too much in the way of improvement from the rest of the kit. And we have the squigs here, at least one of them, maybe both of them. I can't quite tell. There might be more squig pieces somewhere else. Where, again, we're not going to see kind of it connected just once in the joins here. It is, in fact, connected on the muscles of the body. And actually, this one is, there's going to be a big kind of diagonal line, potentially, going across the back half of the squig. So you'll want to watch out for that. Generally, a pile of glue going in there will smooth it down. Should just about work, but do watch out for it. You might need to use a little bit of green stuff just to fill that gap in, if indeed there is a gap. We have more of our muscles. These are missiles here and here. Generally, they're kind of connected okay. It's the bit to watch out for is the cone of the, well, it's the missile head, the warhead of the missile. It's always very round, so you're just, again, like we've talked about with the muscles and we've talked about with the heads, just move with the curvature of it, like that kind of thing. Don't go across the grain, because again, you might flatten off that missile and you might not necessarily want to do that. And yeah, the roundedness looks pretty cool, so just be careful around there. Finally, I have to make sure I get the right sprue. Just checking. It's going to be this one. I remember this. So there we go. This is our third and final sprue for the Wrecka Krew. And there's nothing here that's too surprising, as we've already talked about most of it. We have another piece for the squig here and here. So not all of the squigs are on the other sprue. We have 2 and 2. So it's not a perfectly divided sprue, at least. We do have an interesting, like, big gap here in the sprue. Not sure why that, well, I mean, you rarely see this kind of thing. It would be connected all the way around. We do have a large piece of, like, sprue gate there that needs to come off, and we'll have to watch out for that. The mold lines, and I didn't really check it on the other one, but the mold lines look to be a similar situation to the first sprue, generally across this one, which is a bit of a disappointment. They are quite prominent, so we're going to have to spend a fair amount of time cleaning those models up. But yeah, like I said, there's nothing too surprising on this sprue. We do have things like the torso fronts here, which are generally connected okay. We have it on the top here of the leather, and then on the underside of the kind of, for lack of a better word, tabard, which is pretty good. So all in all, it's not bad. We'll have to see how long it takes to build them, because that's where some of the quality lies. So we will be back in just a moment to see how long it takes to build the Wrecka Krew. So the Wrecka mob's all built. Here they are. We went for a couple of kind of rockets and the single rocket pistol and the big melee weapon, and of course we've built the squigs as well. I just kind of went with what I've seen as the most common kind of configuration, because, you know, I don't know very much about playing Kill Team, but if it's on the picture, it should be fine. Should be fine. Should be. Anyway, one thing to point out about all of them was there were more than enough components to go around, so we didn't have to worry about anything like that. And the mold lines were quite a problem. There was a lot of cleanup involved in putting together those guys. However, I'm hoping, against hope really at this point, that the Ratling Kill Team is better. Now here it is. It's much the same deal, not the same distance. It's much the same deal as the Orcs. We have our little kind of key of what all of the weapons look like. We have, for example, sniper rifle, suppressed sniper rifle, explosive arsenal, battle rifle, tank stopper rifle, bionic arm, combat knife, and the dagger. and we can put on their backpacks and things like that. We don't have anything though really in the way of kind of interchangeable parts as a key here. It might be that there are some, because you can see here we've got the little kind of icon, so two different types of head. But we do still have all of the kind of different variations of things that we can put on the table. So for example, we have the Ratling fixer here with one of two loadouts, so we can have one with a cup of tea or one with not a cup of tea, and then we just have a normal Ratling sniper. So if you've got multiple of this kit, it'll work out that way. Ratling big shot, Ratling sniper, Ratling bomber, Ratling sniper, and so on and so forth, and it just goes on until we get to the last couple, which I'll show you in just a moment. But we have the hard bit here, or a sniper, the raider, or a sniper, Ratling sneak, or a Ratling sniper, a Ratling spotter, or a Ratling sniper. We have the Ratling stash master, or a Ratling sniper, Vox thief, or a sniper there. And then we come over here where we have one sniper that is just built as. There's no variation there, it is just built as by the looks of things. I think that's how that is meant and intended, that we get to here and it's just this, because then we also have the battle mutt as well. Again, no variation there on the good boy. And then we have our tripwire and ammo cache as well. 3 extra little doodads, which you don't have to do any assembly for other than sticking them to the base, which is pretty cool. I like that. I like that kind of thing. So we shall have a look at the sprues. I would imagine that the 28mm base is used somewhere, somehow. Yes, it's used on the Ratling big shot. That's what we need the 28mm base for. It's donated there with a little exclamation point, so just bear that in mind. That's what the 28mm is for, and the 25mm bases are for everything else. I thought maybe the puppy would be on the 28mm, but it's not. It is just the big shot. Right, let's pop that to one side. So we will require all of our remaining 25mm bases and our 28mm base, and we will also require this sprue. So we are going to once again just snap it in half. There we go. So we can look at each half individually. So one thing I also need to point out about the orcs was that the pieces were actually just scattered all over the sprue, so it took a little while to find them. I'm hoping that is not the case here, but we shall find out once we come to the build of these things anyway. And the other thing we want to check out is mold lines, and it doesn't look like it's going to be that much better. You can see, looking there, component I think 104, that body, you can see quite a chunky mold line coming up the trouser just around there. So unfortunately it might be that this is the same deal, and well, there's 11 of these plus the tripwires plus the ammo box plus all the extra stuff. It means that we might be involved in a lot more cleanup here than perhaps is necessary. Well, it's necessary, it's just not what we want to do. Anyway, we do have this tripwire here, which I'm just going to point out. We have a little kind of extra bit of sprue wastage here on the tripwire, which we want to get rid of. It's the same deal here, but it's actually attached to the sprue. So this is loose, this is not. The ammo cache, which is just there, component 125, that's just in one single piece, so we already know that, but there it is. It's looking pretty cool, connected around the outside. It's not kind of like stashed on its side and then you have to kind of smooth across all of those bits and bobs. It just looks like you have to deal with a mold line that goes around the outside of it, which is pretty cool. That will be the same thing for the tripwires, because they're on here are sideways on, sideways facing. So the bodies generally of our Ratlings seem to be almost in one piece. We do have like the kind of occasional missing torso on this sprue, but it doesn't look to me like we have kind of missing legs or anything like that. So heads are obviously separate and stuff like that, and as we've already seen, there are a couple of different head options for some of them. Well, I think probably for most of them as well. I didn't check that in the instructions, but you know, it is what it is. And well, we're looking at these heads here and they appear to be connected in all kinds of irritating places. So this one's actually connected at the chin, so that one's okay, but then we have one here right on the top of the beret, which we don't like to see because, again, very prominent place right on top of the head. We don't like that kind of thing. We have the same thing here for a bald-headed Ratling just up there. That component, there was a connection point right on the top of the head, which we don't like to see. So you want to watch out for that. And then we have one over here where, again, we're connected on the chin. One here that's over on the chin. So the chin's okay. Top of the head is not. So that's the top of the head. And that's the top of the head, and that's the top of the head, whereas these two are on the chin, which is cool. So it's kind of a half and half mixed bag kind of result here. We don't have that many in the way of kind of unsheathed blades where we're going to look for like connection points on the cutting edges of blades and stuff. Now there is one thing we kind of do need to bear in mind, is that we do have things like this little basing piece here, component 91. It might be that you want to sub-assemble that to be able to get in and around the miniature. That would be one of those instances where I would maybe recommend sub-assembling. Maybe. We have things like this little cloak, which is pretty cool. It's connected around the outside, but this one is not on the kind of the edge of it. It's like right on the actual smooth part of the cloak. Same up here, right around the hood. So that's a connection point that we have to watch out for, that we don't generally like to see. We have the bits of the puppy here. I'm not sure if the face is here, but it's connected on the leather here and here, but then, and same here, but then we're connected on the actual flesh of the dog here and here. So you want to watch out for those bits. The leather's fine, but when it's on the muscles, move with the curvature of the piece. Don't kind of cut straight or apply too much pressure, because you will end up cutting stuff off. And I think that goes with the same for most of these pieces. They are very, very small. For example, we do have like connection points here on the knee of that particular body, but here we're on the underside of the foot, which is one of those interesting things where it's a fleshy foot naturally, but it's the underside which is going to stick to the base, so that's just about okay. We like underside of the foot. Doesn't really matter in this instance if it is on the foot, well, on the underside. We don't want to see it on the top, because that is where things will become complicated and irritating to deal with. The guns and that seem to be kind of connected quite a lot to the sprue, and even here we have a cardinal sin where we're connected right on the hand of that sniper rifle just there. Again, the reason we don't like that is because that's supposed to be quite a detailed textured hand, and well, it's quite easy to just make it a flat cut hand when you're trying to clean it up, especially with this amount of mold lines and stuff like that that seem to be all over these kits. We have another head just there. We might have already talked about that one, but that one is connected on the underside of the chin, so that's looking pretty good. Okay, it's not an ideal start, but we do have a couple of little kind of good things here, like for example the dish here on the Vox Thief. We're only connected twice, here and here, which is good. We like to see that. We don't have anything too spindly as well, apart from these trip wires, and the trip wires, especially this one where it's attached to the sprue, you're going to want to cut it there on the trip wire first, and then just very carefully kind of like maybe cut away this piece of sprue so that you don't, when you clip here, it doesn't press into that bit and then snap the trip wire. The other one should be fine because it's floating just there. Just be careful when you actually do get it off, because again, you can carve too deeply and end up snapping the trip wire, and then it'll explode everywhere, which is not what you want from your trip wires. Well, it is, but not you being the one who sets it off. Then we have this sprue, and I think we're going to see much the same kind of thing going on here. So we do have some of the heads here and here where we're connected on the underside of the chin, which is okay. This one's on the underside, this one's on the underside, so is this one, as is this one and this one. There's lots of variation in the heads, which is nice, and they're not all kind of very generic. But then we have one right there on the top of on the top of the beanie hat. That should be really smooth, and again, that's going to be a little bit tricky to deal with. So there we go. We have one where we're connected twice here from the underside of the chin and on the top of the head, which isn't ideal. And then we have another one just there. Again, we're connected right on the top of the hood, which isn't great to see. The mold lines are just as bad here. It was all on one sprue anyway, so that's kind of what I would expect. Well, I don't expect mold lines, but it's kind of based on the experience of this box so far. Mold lines are indeed an issue for all of it. Sniper rifles, I would still say probably about the same in terms of their kind of connection points. Some are better than others, some are worse than others. This one's pretty good, for example, on the underside of the underside of the handle, and then just on the top of the flat kind of, well, on the body of the weapon. But then we're over here, where we're on the kind of shoulder of the Ratling, here on the end of the barrel, and here on the underside of the handle. The big shot looks pretty good. Again, just on smooth machined parts here, which makes it nice and easy on us to get those things off the sprue. But again, you do just always want to be careful, especially around a scope like that where it's quite rounded. Again, you don't want to just smooth flat that, cut that off. So just be really careful with these. We do actually have a loose leg over here. We should have another one just there. So a couple of these bodies are going to be a little bit more multi-part than perhaps I expected from the rest of it. But yeah, it's kind of a fairly average sprue, I suspect. It's not fantastic, it's not terrible. The mold lines really in this box are what is kind of killing the enjoyment of building it, I think, just a little bit. But let's see how long it takes to build a Ratling, and we'll be right back. Okay, so our Ratlings are all built, and in terms of scale, it's somewhat off the charts. Now, just like the Orcs, the amount of mold lines on here was quite punishing. It took a little while to build these. If you've got a better quality set, yours will go a lot quicker than mine did, but there was a lot of cleanup involved in building these. But we have built all of them. I didn't build every single specialist just because I preferred the look of some of just the plain generic snipers. But there we go. Looking pretty cool. And so we'll just pop these to one side. And the last part of Brutal and Cunning is interesting, as we've already kind of sort of talked about it just a little bit, is that we have the terrain. Now the terrain, as mentioned already, is an upgrade kit for the stuff from Hivestorm. So it's not really much to build on it. There's the two little bunkers, but what it does do is it interacts with these buildings, for example. So we've already done these, and you can see the channel video on the channel on how I painted these. But we will need these just kind of to demonstrate what the deal is. So if I show you the back of the instructions, there we go. You can see that based on this, there's a thing that you don't glue in order to put a wall in that you also don't glue in, if you see what I mean. So in the example of this one just here, it is this building here, the one without the drums on it, and then you have this section here where that square thing will push in there, and then your rest of your kind of the rest of the wall will actually just sort of slot in there, allegedly. So we're actually just kind of going to sort of do that live in many ways, because they are terrain sprues, and as mentioned, there is only one thing that you put together, and that's the bunkers. And the bunkers consist of these 5 pieces, and then that's it. You don't want to put these walls in because they shouldn't be glued, because you should be able to pop them out, and you don't want to put the doors in because you should be able to open them for your games of Kill Team. So it's pretty cool. You're just going to pretty much cut the terrain off of the sprue, and then you're gonna profit, I guess. So if we have a quick look at the first sprue, I mean, both the sprues are identical. Now, as you can see, that is our large kind of thick piece that will go into the building and should just push into the building. So it might be that, like, you might want to maybe do a little bit of a varnish job or something on some of your terrain, but weirdly, looking at this, there are mold lines on it, as you would always expect on terrain, but they're all around the outside, and none of it's particularly difficult to get off if you really want to. But sometimes it's just, you know, more hassle than it's worth to do that. So if we just clip off this one piece first. This is the big thick piece that we've talked about, and we're just going to get rid of that extra little bit of flash just along here, like that, and that there. You see there's a little bit of a mold line going along, so we're just going to just give it a little bit of a scrape. There we go. And we've got one last little bit there. So according to the instructions, this should now just press in to the building. Just here, you see? So let's see if it actually does it. That'll be the main test. So you've got these little grooves here. This is apparently where it goes. So this should just go in there, like so. And then the rest of the wall will come along. So let's clip out a piece of wall and see what that's like. Because this example gives us the door. Because there's no like groove along here. So that's interesting, because is it just going to be a floating wall is the question. Because we do have on these pieces, and I'm just clipping it out now, but screen presence is obviously at a premium here. So just get this door out. Lot of clip points on this, but again, it's kind of what you expect from terrain. It should, once we've cleaned it up, we're not going to clean it up now, but there we go. That's what I was worried about, is that just going to fall out? And it shouldn't do once we've actually primed it, because there'll be a bit of extra friction from the paint job. But that's it. There you go. And these should be a little bit sturdier. Once again, we've got rid of all of that stuff on the underside of it. But there we go. I mean, that's the terrain. That's how it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it all clipped off, and we will paint it for the channel. But we'll probably do something around building the board for it, because we're just going to replicate this so that it matches. So we don't need a second video for that. But we'll see how it goes. It's a pretty cool sprue, basically, with only one bit of assembly really for 5 components. That does make it an interesting proposition, and well, we can only really answer these questions as to whether the whole thing holds together once we've actually primed it. So we'll have to see in the future. It does just slip out though, and it might be that it's worth just maybe gluing this to one piece of the wall, maybe. So for example, just gluing it in like that. So assembling it to the piece of terrain by putting it there, and then gluing it in, just so that it's not this kind of forever ever floating piece, and that way it's like stuck like that. But that's your choice to make, of course. We shall see. Well, there you have it, all built. Now here is the big question: did I paint all of the miniatures? Absolutely not. The reason being, of course, is that War of the Rohirrim very recently came out, and I had to get all of that box done for all of you, but also for me. But this is a really cool box. I did, however, manage to get the entirety of the Wrecka mob done, as you can see on the screen before you. Now, we're going to do something slightly different with the terrain. That's why I haven't done it yet. And the Ratlings, well, that's coming very, very soon. But these look absolutely fantastic, even if I do say so myself. Have no fear though, there are videos coming for the Wrecka mob, and there will be one for the Ratlings once I finish them. I'm about halfway through on the Ratlings, so you'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, we're sprue reviewing. So, what did we think of the sprues? Well, we'll just start with the terrain, because for me that's kind of the headline here in some ways. I mean, it's rare that it's kind of a talking point, I think, but I think it's a really cool set of sprues. What I do think is lacking though in this box is a third or possibly even a fourth one, just to kind of make it feel a little bit more joined up. So there is that, but it's just a generally nice set of sprues. There's a bit of a strange thing in that the kind of piece that connects into the strongholds from Hivestorm, from the Vulcus terrain, that it doesn't have a groove for your kind of the walls to actually just slot into. I am surprised that that's not there. I feel like it probably should be, but it is what it is. The thing I like about it as well is it's actually quite a succinct, to the point sprue. It just does what it says it's going to do. It's not covered in gubbins. The pieces aren't too dissimilar to what's going on the stronghold, so if you've already painted them, you'll know what you're going to do, which is exactly what I'm going to do when painting these things. But the fact that there's only 2 sprues of it in here does make it a little bit tricky to create the coolest possible layouts for your tables. There's a couple of examples in the book which do work. They look great, but kind of being a little bit more inventive with it, just having one more sprue for one more bunker, so one more corner, would have just made the world of difference. As for the Ratlings, well, I think it's a really, really characterful set of miniatures. There's pretty much a specialist for every single option that's in there, or at least a kind of more characterful build for them, which makes it a very, very kind of malleable kit. It's very, very cool and very characterful as well, which is exactly what you want from your kill team sets. It's not like, for example, the Phobos kill team, where realistically it's just kind of a couple of bits and bobs here to make them look a little bit fancier over and above some of your other Phobos stuff. This feels like a proper kill team sprue for 10 models, well, 14 models in total if you include the booby traps and the pug as well, which you should, because that's a proper model. It's a really nice unit, and it's not very confusing at all. There's not, like, you know, an optional plasma gun here, and you don't know whether or not that's going to be an optimal loadout or anything like that if you're not a kill team super fan already. So, as a set of miniatures, it's a really, really cool unit, and very, very characterful, very, very nice, and they're the right size as well. I kind of worried a little bit that they might be almost as big as the Leagues of Votan models, which are already very, very big, but they're not. They're really small, which is very, very cool. Next we have the Wrecka Mob, which again, a very, very, very nice kit. The fact that there's a rocket launcher for every single one of them, or a melee weapon for every single one of them, is really good stuff. It means you can build it as the unit, or you can make a kill team out of it, which makes it, again, a very compatible kit with both kill team and Warhammer 40,000, which is absolutely fantastic. And let's face it, a lot of people buy these boxes to add them to their 40k armies rather than to play them in kill team. That's not to say that kill team isn't a very popular game. I'm sure that it is. It's just, I see generally from my perspective a lot more people saying, I've added this to my insert faction army here. And that's why these things generally tend to sell out a lot, especially if there's something very powerful like the Kassakin in 9th edition. But it is a very, very nice kit, and there's a lot of really orky pieces in here. A lot of rockets being launched with the smoke trails coming out of it as an optional extra to put on your miniatures is very, very, very nice. It's a really, really cool thing to put into the kit. It just makes them very characterful, makes them very customizable, and it means that you can, again, get multiple of these later on when you're adding them to your 40k armies to create a lot of variation within the kit. You can also just create some really hefty dudes to put into your other orcs. You can have, maybe even use them as knobs, who knows. I'm not sure if they're big enough for that, but they are what they are. Now, the reason I've been very, very positive about both these kits is because the main negative for both of them is that there's mold lines everywhere, at least on my copy. So your mileage may vary. It always does. You never know whether or not you're going to get one that's in perfect nick or you're going to get one that was as mold liney as mine was. But the reason it took so long to put all of these miniatures together was because of that. There was a lot of cleanup involved, and to be honest, I'm not even sure I managed to get all of it as I was going through. I was kind of losing my mind a little bit. So that will affect my experience of the box, but that is subjective based on the type of product that you've managed to get. Like I said, it can vary from box to box as to how bad those mold lines can be. Otherwise, the models generally go together pretty well across both teams. The Orcs a little bit more because they are that bit bigger. They're not as fiddly as the Ratlings. The Ratlings are very fiddly at times, which makes them a little bit more of a difficult experience to put together, whereas the Orcs, they just kind of, you know, they're Orcs, they're big miniatures, they just go together, you know. So overall, I think this box is absolutely superb at what it's trying to be. It's trying to be a bolt-on, an expansion, and whatever you want to call it. It's DLC for the Hivestorm box that came out a few months, weeks, however long. Time is irrelevant. It is the next patch for Kill Team, and it generally screams that, you know. The fact that it's Astra Militarum and we've just had Astra Militarum again also just kind of plays into that a little bit. So thematically wise, it's really good. And I do really like that the Kill Team terrain here does go together with the Hivestorm stuff. It is a natural bolt onto it because it's an expansion set, which is very, very cool. It might be that in the future we see a third Kill Team set with maybe some more Astra Militarum in it, who knows, but that we get a little bit more flavour or something to add to our Hivestorm set, and then it'll be done and be a really dense, very, very cool set of terrain. Who knows? That's what I would do though. I would keep doing it like this. Big box and then proper expansions that actually interact and design-wise actually make sense as well. Because at times those previous Kill Team boxes, they've come with really cool terrain that doesn't really match anything else that's there. It is what it is. But anyway, I think it's a really good box. What's my rating at the end of all of it? Well, I'm gonna be very, very, very generous with this one. And for what it is, for what it's trying to do, and for finally achieving that goal that they've talked about with this style of Kill Team box, I'm gonna give this one an 8.7 out of 10. Yes. 1.3 comes off because of the slight fiddliness nature of the building, and basically the main point deduction comes from the fact that mine was covered in mold lines across both of my Kill Teams, which made the building of it significantly longer. That's the main criticism I have here of this box, and that's only my experience. I don't have multiple of these to compare the mold lines to, so, you know, I can only do it based off what's in front of me. So there we have it. Brutal and Cunning, a really good set to end the year, basically, for our final sprue review. I hope you've enjoyed these this year. We will keep doing them next year if you want to keep seeing them. Let me know if there's something I can do different here, or if, you know, you don't ever want to see one ever again. That's also a valid opinion. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Do make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and comment below telling me your thoughts on Brutal and Cunning, and maybe just generally in 2024. Don't do it of me. I've had enough of that today. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you'd like to support me further, you absolutely can do so by heading to patreon.com/Warhipster, just like all of these wonderful, amazing people have done. And alternatively, you could become a YouTube channel member by clicking on the join button below, exactly like these fabulous folks have done, scrolling up on the screen before you. There are so many of you out there that it really takes my breath away, and I cannot thank you enough for everything you do, as without you I wouldn't be able to keep making these Contrast Plus videos. And if you really like this video and you want to send me a little thanks, just click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.